Good afternoon. It is not Sunday. It is Thursday, and ahoy mateys, because we're coming on here early today. And why am I talking like a pirate? Well, that's because this weekend is Gasparilla, which is a very big holiday here in Tampa. And it's because pirates take over our town. Well, the good thing is they're not coming to rape or plunder or take away our First, Second, Fourth, 10th, or 14th Amendment rights. So, given our current government or the pirates, I'll take the pirates. We'll discuss that and more on this week's special edition of The Rotation. Javier, I don't think you know about Gasparilla because it's kind of an anomaly. It's our version of Mardi Gras, kind of. Because we celebrate when this pirate named Jose Gaspar tried to take over Tampa, and all the citizens got on boats and they fought him off.
That's amazing. I got to check it out, man.
Hispanic pirates.
I love the vibes of the intro. It got me in the mood. Should be lighting up. We're also on Instagram, so lighting up something.
You may not be familiar with how this podcast started, but essentially the podcast was just me and Cano smoking weed in my garage. That was the start of it. Mm-hmm. So that's hence the name The Rotation. So if you're a guest in The Rotation
podcast. I don't know if you knew.
You know, I read somewhere that like 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3, and we have been on the air 11 years now. So this is we've had the opportunity to really uplift the podcast by being on WTMP radio in Tampa, which is a historically Black radio station. In the past, it's no longer in operation, but we really did get that opportunity to broadcast on AM, FM, and then now we broadcast because of social media and the internet on our own channels. So we have a lot more creative control. We don't have to worry about censorship. So our guests can feel free to speak freely, and we do speak very freely and give people the latest in cannabis news and entertainment, which is why it's so awesome to have a luminary in the cannabis space like yourself. Folks may not know you, but they do know the organization and product that you produce. And as editor-in-chief of High Times Magazine, which has been a cornerstone of cannabis culture in America for decades, we are very honored to have you as a guest on our show. So welcome, Javier.
Yeah. Now, as the OG of the crew here, I've been reading High Times the longest, and actually did read more than just the coupons to get the mushrooms through the mail. I actually did read all the articles. But let's first introduce ourselves. My name is Gary Stein. I'm the political director and policy director of Suncoast Normal. We don't have sound effects today. Yeah. That's not a very good beat.
I'm making a sound effect.
Your beat spot. Anyways, and below me here is our deputy director, our master of business administration, and the proprietor of Chill and Mushroom and CBD dispensary in Ybor City, Florida, Carlos Jose Angel Hermida.
Woo! Yeah!
All right.
And he's our pseudo-Cuban too. To my right, your left, our executive director, coming to us from location unknown somewhere in Anne Arundel or possibly Montgomery or possibly DC. Our executive director, Christopher Cano.
And thank you, Gary. Thank you. Appreciate the introduction.
And below him and to our kitty corner from me, our special guest. Now, we have had other people from this organization on before. We've had Malcolm McKinnon on. We've had Steve Bloom on. And by the way, Steve Bloom did hand us Javier, so hats off to Steve. I appreciate that. But the new editor of the revitalized High Times, Javier Hasse. Javier, how you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. Glad Christopher is not revealing his location. As any smart grower knows, it's best not to reveal everything.
You know, we have a fan club, and Carlos often debates of whether Ed Rosenthal or Jorge Cervantes is the best grower in America. But I love the fact that Cervantes always had guerrilla growing tips that you could read in High Times. That's definitely a legacy that we appreciate you continuing.
Let me settle that discussion. Look how easy it will become. Jorge Cervantes lives in Spain. So we can easily comfortably say, Ed Rosenthal is the best in America, and Jorge Cervantes is the best in Spain.
Yeah, here you go.
Good point. I like it. There you go, Carlos. We don't have to argue about it.
What happened? I wasn't paying attention. What happened?
Javier was pointing out that Cervantes lives in Spain, so that technically makes Ed Rosenthal the best grower in America by default.
Yeah.
And I give Jorge credit because
Suck it, guys.
Jorge's living on a higher latitude, so it is harder to get good, strong buds at that high latitude because usually you end up with a lot more hemp with a lot less THC. So, and Ed Rosenthal, he was in California. He had the whole row of all the different kinds of climates there. So, give him credit on that. Plus the fact that all of our cannabis seeds from here came from Spain. We know that.
Well, here's what I'm going to tell you, though. Keep an eye out because you will soon see the return of Jorge and Ed and Kyle Cushman and other High Times legends to a roster.
That's amazing to hear. That's absolutely amazing.
First time I've said it.
Well, we appreciate you joining us, Javier, and sharing that with us. I mean, High Times is I remember just in college reading High Times. I remember in the 2000s, High Times being something that me and my roommates would couldn't wait for the next edition and see all the amazing photos that were being produced. And that was our standard for bud. Is like High Times had the price charts in the back, had the beautiful centerfolds. So I remember my college apartment wasn't one with naked women on the wall. It was beautiful ladies. Yeah, exactly. That were in High Times centerfolds, and by ladies I mean plants.
Well, we have both in this centerfold. Very tasteful art by Lelen Ruete. She is an Argentine photographer based in Uruguay. She made this one.
Nice.
For the centerfold. It's amazing. This one is another great one, I think. Matka Films, also Latino guy based in Barcelona. Some very nice nug shots, and the upcoming issue, which is dropping in February, has the top 100 nug shots of 2025 as submitted by our audience.
Nice.
And I'm definitely interested to hear what's in store for High Times. It sounds like keeping up with Josh and everything that you're saying now. Expect a return of Ed Rosenthal and Jorge Cervantes, all these great Kyle Cushman. It sounds like there's an effort to get back to roots. You know what I mean? But
both.
The industry's changed a little bit. There's got to be some new stuff in the horizon too. So I'm kind of interested in that too.
I mean, for a while, at least I had Freedom Leaf to lean on, but now that's gone too. So I'm glad you're back.
I am very glad we're back too. And yeah, I mean, it's clearly a mix, right? We have to honor tradition. We have to honor a legacy. We have to be loyal to the people who built this and to our audience, but also reach new audiences, right? There's new generations who didn't necessarily grow up with High Times. A lot of what I'm seeing too is, people, kids in college and right out of college don't seem, at least from what I've seen, as interested in cannabis culture or in cannabis activism as millennials and other generations are. And I think that's because they grew up in a more normalized, less stigmatized society, and of course a lot of that is to credit normal is to credit for that for sure, in the normalization of cannabis, but also just like it's one of those things where it's now they just go to a dispensary, you get a vape pen. And, so we want to re-engage people in the movement because there's still a lot we need to fight for. America doesn't even have a medical cannabis framework, like federally. Yeah. We're talking about rescheduling and we're talking about safe banking. We don't have a medical cannabis law. That's insane to me. Like, what, 100 countries have frameworks like for medical? Wow. Like the president came out and said, cannabis clearly has medical applications. I am not interested in them, but it does. So
he should put a topical on that bruise that just don't seem to go away,
However, if he shows topicals at CBD, he may be taken off of Facebook, because they are cracking down on CBD topicals now, from what I understand. If you even mention it in a post, they're starting to knock it down.
Yeah, Gary, that's a great point, and I wanted to get Javier's 2 cents on this. We value freedom of speech so much in America as our First Amendment right, but the vast majority of people don't realize that applies to the government and not private goods like social media. How do we deal with this advent of social media censorship that these big corporations like Meta seem to be inflicting on the cannabis community? And it seems like you're well positioned with High Times to try and help with that.
Unfortunately, like all we can do is complain, advocate to lawmakers so that they regulate these tech behemoths better. But it's out of our control, right? Like, in my position, in my view, like these are private platforms. Their policies suck, and their enforcement sucks, and their AI moderation sucks. That it's the reality we have to play with. Just like High Times in like decades ago had to deal with other kinds of censorship, and they found smart ways to navigate it. So we have to do the same thing. And people are often pissed, like, why do you say herb or Mary Jane? Just say marijuana and show the biggest buds. It's like, yeah, but we will get deleted. And I think our priority is to get information and, just spread this desire for activism, this passion for the plant and the movement that we have to as many people as possible. And it does not do us any good to try and enforce the rules so that we get censored. And again, there are other ways where we can continue to push for this. I've tried to reach Meta many times, to do stories with them on Forbes and on other platforms I worked with and High Times, and they never responded. They don't want to talk about it. They don't care. Like and their enforcement policies have changed over time. Right now, they say they allow cannabis content as long as it's educational, but nothing related to sales. But it's all moderated by algorithms. And algorithms, even though AI is very smart, it isn't that smart. And so it gets it wrong all the time. They get they will take down, like, we will post a cover of a magazine from the 70s and they'll say, oh, you're selling drugs. And then, we will post like, hey, come to our New York Cup. We won't even say cannabis. And they're like, oh, you're selling drugs. It's like, we're not selling drugs. We're doing journalism. But yeah, I mean, I think we need to continue to push to get them to change these policies, but also understand that, at least for me, it's better to still be able to communicate, to inform, to advocate, even if that means getting creative with wording or the imagery that accompanies our content. Now, other platforms are more free. That's why our website is really where great content works, where you can see 100 knock shots for 2025 all in there, where you can see our articles, that clearly, say every word we want to say and curse. Like, people who are pitching me stories many times ask me, like, hey, what's the word count? What's this? I'm like, dude, write something you're proud of. If you want to curse. Right? I'll maybe title something like, oh, this is bullshit, like literally. And that level of freedom is amazing. Same for the print magazine, right? It's like we can show the most beautiful buds that we are not able to show on social. You check out the print magazine and it's like buds.
Yes.
And let's see, more buds and more weed.
Oh, no, come back. There we go. I don't know why that happened.
More weed.
The buds.
More weed and delicious weed.
Buds and Betties. It's a good combination. Yes, absolutely. Javier, that's a great segue into my next question for you. High Times traditionally has been known for being an amazing print, publication, and in the 21st century, print for many reasons is going away, whether it's competition, whether it's an environmental consciousness around utilizing digital over print. But you point out clearly print still has a place, especially in the level of social media censorship that we have in internet censorship. But how do you envision High Times, adapting to a 21st century environment where everything is essentially digital, and even then, the content that people produce in a lot of ways is so much more narrow because people have the attention span of a TikTok video and don't necessarily want to read a 2-3 page expository. So how do you deal with that in this day and age?
We create different kinds of content for different kinds of people. My hope is that our content is interesting enough for people to want to read it. When it's a policy development, when it's science, I try to explain it briefly and in layman's terms. Now, we do a daily cover story on the website, and those tend to be long, and they are intended for people who want to read them. Now, we make them interesting. We make them flow well. We give them a good headline so that you're interested in clicking, and we tell you what it's about at the start so that you really read the entire thing. And then print goes much deeper. I mean, honestly, the bar for getting a story in the print magazine is high, and we keep it high intentionally because we really want it to be a thought piece. Also fun, right? We're not doing ourselves any favors pretending that weed isn't fun also and joyful, right? It's our issues or our content is about advocacy, and it's about science, and it's about criminal justice and reform, but it's also fun. It can be all of this because, at least to me, the plant encompasses and provides all of this, right? It opens all of these avenues. But I think, there's still a lot of interest in print. People are resubscribing. People are buying the magazine. We put out our 50th anniversary magazine last year. We have our next print magazine dropping in February. We're doing collectible issues quarterly.
Nice.
It's like very nice print, good covers, very good content in them, right? The next magazine that is dropping, we have a lost Tom Forsade interview from the 70s that had never surfaced till now. An interview with the last assistant of Hunter Thompson, analysis on the drugs that make the internet, that build the internet, an essay on cannabis and women's purses, right? It's very interesting. I don't know, at least I really enjoy it. Like in the editor's letter, I kind of said that. It's like, there is no specific theme. It's just something cool that we liked. There's a new psychedelic that is emerging, and there's a story about it in there. A couple of features on living soil, because we love sun-grown weed and think that living soil provides fantastic benefits both for the cannabis and the environment. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I get excited. Honestly, holding something like this, I've written 2 books, and one of them went on to be a bestseller. And I love this more than any book I wrote, right? This magazine just feels right.
Now, High Times has always
it's
been
important. It's important to so many people. You look into the, I not to self promote much or whatever, but as you can see, I opened a head shop, and when I was writing the business plan for my head shop, I was doing a lot of research on like what head shops actually meant back in the 70s in the Haight-Ashbury district. It was literally like, this is where you go to find magazines that talk about marijuana and talk about legalization. Like the reason why you can't say bong in a head shop isn't because there's such an issue with the word bong. It's because they wanted to hurt the activist movement, So High Times it's given us a way to get information, to get our info out there, to share things, to learn about something that didn't really have good information out there already. So like it's so important especially as people that have been in the movement for so long. It's so important. It is so fucking exciting to see it come back. Because at one point it was like High Times. There was like other cannabis magazines that weren't like huge, but like you had like Dope and Culture or whatnot. And then all of a sudden it just fucking nothing. It just seemed like there was nothing out there, and a big part of it was the social media stuff that we were talking about. So yeah, thank you for bringing it back. Thanks for keeping it so activist driven, and
For those of us who were aware prior to 1996, when the whole culture of cannabis was surrounding cannabis, one thing that changed besides the laws was the sweep of industry and money into cannabis. And so a lot of the time the culture shifted from the plant and its benefits and all of the culture around it and who was smoking it, who was using it, et cetera, to how to make the most amount of money as quickly as possible in that kind of situation. And that created the whole booth culture we see today of what I call the third market. We have the good market, we have the legacy market, and we have the booth market, which kind of like intervenes in a Venn diagram kind of aspect, because you get it from practically everybody. Those are the folks who want to hit the shortcuts and make the money. And yet there are still people like yourself, I'm certain, that just love the plant itself and everything about it that springs from it. And yet you also just segued here from Benzinga, which was essentially an industry platform. My guess, it'd be interesting to know how you made this shift from Benzinga to High Times, and whether you actually have shifted at all, and whether industry and culture can mix together.
A little bit of everything. Industry and culture can mix. They don't always mix. The shift came pretty naturally, right? I've been a stoner first before I was a financial journalist. I was a grower before I was a financial journalist, right? And so I think what we built is super cool. It's super interesting. And it did good in many ways, right? Because it does help normalize cannabis in the eyes of people who still resist it, right? People who are more conservative, politicians who care about money, and money talks. But I mean, this is definitely fun. This is personal. This, I live and breathe the culture. So the transition came naturally, definitely. But I think there's space for everyone, right? There is no right or wrong reason to like cannabis, to support legalization, right? Ideally, you support it because you support freedom and criminal, and justice in general. But whatever rocks your boat, I don't care. We need all the support we can get. So if certain people are swayed by money, as long as it's moving toward ending prohibition, I will be the guardian of my own ethics. Josh will be the guardian of the ethics of this magazine. I will too. But we cannot tell people how to feel or what to do, right? I think that is part of that same discourse, right? If we preach freedom, people are free to do as they please. Now, there is also a reality in the commoditization of the culture, right? And the commercialization of the culture that might not go as well with longtime activists, with growers, right? But I think if the plant will teach us anything, is tolerance and coexistence, right? As long as the people doing business are ethical in their practices, it's America. Like, it's a capitalistic society, right?
Money talks, right?
They don't even allow a social equity program whatsoever governmentally. And so I'm hoping that the two can continue to coexist and things of that sort.
Well, Gary, on the issue of social equity, that has been essentially a term that, depending on where you fall on the political spectrum, it can really trigger negative feelings for certain folks. But social equity itself, the way the practical approach from a policy point of view that we've seen lawmakers use it to address, is that they're essentially throwing scraps to the bigger meal to folks who can't traditionally pay to play in our political system, which is tied directly so much into money and politics. For a grower, a mom and pop shop, someone who's a small business owner who wants to be in the cannabis industry, the social equity programs in various legal states have been the ways that they're able to leverage their way in, versus someone who might previously getting into cannabis might have a multi-100,000 acre tobacco farm or citrus field or nursery like we saw in Florida. And that's really the crux of it all is, and really America has always been like that. You know, for some people that we feel outraged about it, there was a time where the guy who was putting in the sweat equity to drill oil out of the ground in the Midwest was ate up or pushed out by Standard Oil, right? The Rockefellers. So America has always been about the big guys versus the little guys. You know, you think of the rap song, "Big Bank hates Little Bank," right? And that really is the epitome of American capitalism in a lot of ways. And Javier's right. The culture itself, the people who would consider themselves the vanguard of cannabis culture, who have been in this fight, you know, essentially since modern prohibition was rolled out in the 70s, you know, feel some type of way about the fact that now they're a little older. They might want to take their money and do this in a legal framework, and they don't necessarily have those opportunities because they can't write the campaign checks that folks in industry can to the politicians. And so social equity programs themselves are either demonized for political purposes, or they're not given the attention they deserve. But it really goes back to market caps and licensing caps that we see in legal markets. You know, whether it's a legal state like Maryland, which has license caps, or it's a medical state like Florida, which originally started with only wanting to dish out 5 licenses. There is a specific political motivation of money in politics that mixes and does not necessarily equal people from the legacy market or small business owners being able to legally participate in the cannabis industry, which is why we kind of go back to what Javier was saying previously, that High Times still has a space for guerrilla growers and people in the cannabis culture and folks in the legacy market, and it's going to remain what it always has been. It's just rebranded and launched under new leadership. And Javier, we're glad that you're that person that's helping maintain the helm of that, because it is an important legacy. It's something that my dad and I could bond over, whether it was him pulling out his old episode, his old editions of High Times, and us watching the Cheech and Chong's movies together. For that's something that perhaps, like I said earlier, that we talked about was Gen Z and Gen Alpha as they come of age, don't have that same appreciation, and we got to bridge the gap. So that's we appreciate your views on doing that. But I want to pivot real quick, because you don't just do High Times, right? You have your own thing that you got going on. You have El Planteo. Tell the folks more about Javier and what do you got going on outside of being the captain of the ship at High Times.
Well, I mean, High Times definitely takes much of my time, as you can imagine. I'm very committed because I love it. And El Planteo is a Spanish language media outlet focused on cannabis, the most read in the Spanish speaking world. And we have very good distribution partners. We're of course also partners with High Times and cross content and also have High Times in Spanish now. And you can find it, for instance, on Instagram as hightimes.es. So it's a project that my partners and I started in 2020, and it grew real quickly because I think it came to fill a specific gap. Talking to the people who are involved in the cannabis culture and the cannabis industry beyond just the grow tips, right? For many years, the content was solely focused on growing, and that is super important content. And we need consistent, we still need more and more new content about growing cannabis, because techniques evolve, because technologies evolve, because genetics change. But we thought of El Planteo like a mainstream platform that talks about cannabis and other topics and just incorporates it into quote unquote normal life, right? Which I think is also very interesting, right? some of my friends who I smoke with love to talk about cannabis, and we smoke and we talk weed. Many other friends of mine just enjoy to smoke weed because it's fantastic, and then talk about anything else, music and movies and TV and culture and books and travel and things to do and politics in general. And so I think that is also important, right? To incorporate cannabis into the day-to-day conversation and discussion, and not as an isolated topic. And it can be both, right? It can be both. There's always a niche, right? There's a lot of people who drink wine and just enjoy wine with dinner, and some people who are really interested in wine and will talk about the aroma and the body and the tannins, but it's not every wine consumer, right?
Yeah.
And so similar things can be said about cannabis consumers and cannabis patients. A lot of people medicate with cannabis and don't necessarily want to spend all day talking about their medicine, right? Unless it's like Ozempic, people don't usually talk all day long about what meds they're taking, right? And when they do, they start bugging their friends. My mom and dad nowadays, they're 80, and they're like, all of my friends are constantly talking about their meds. And it's like, yeah, it's a bummer. But, fortunately, cannabis provides an alternative way to medicate that doesn't need to be terrifying, that doesn't need to feel bad. And that is something that was somehow, I think, instilled in our minds through our education and indoctrination, that medicating needs to feel bad. Otherwise, it's not working. And here we have a natural medicine and therapeutic tool, depending on what ailment you're treating, that can also bring joy and well-being, not just health. And that is fantastic.
And I can say that I prefer the smell of raw terpenes over cod liver oil.
Two things I want to bring up. First off, one thing I hear prohibitionists say quite a bit right now, especially when it comes to hemp and weed. It's like a big thing in New York City, right? I don't care if marijuana is legalized. I just don't want to see it everywhere. I don't want to smell it everywhere. And then I look at it from my perspective, and I'm here, a pothead that doesn't really drink, and I'm in a drinker's world. I walk down the block, and I've got beer signs in my face, and come drink at my bar. It's such a hypocritical statement to say that, I want legal. I'd have no problem with marijuana, but, I don't want to see it. Keep that in your house. Second thing I want to bring up, I'm going to go ahead and do the normal thing here. Me and Gary have been having quite a bit of a debate
for 10 years now.
For quite a long time. And I think you're the perfect person to settle this.
Yeah, I think you should agree with me.
No, so when cannabis first became illegal, right, there was a lot of racist reasoning behind that. And a lot of the reasons why you see marijuana in legislation is because of racism towards Latino people. They want to kind of build the stigma on cannabis based on the racism. Those Latinos are always smoking that marijuana, trying to bring it up here. But times are different now. The Hispanics are essentially a majority now in the United States. If you're trying to tell people not to say marijuana, which is simply a Spanish term, right, it seems kind of racist to me. Yet my buddy over there on the top kind of holds that we shouldn't be normal, we shouldn't be Norcal. How do you feel about this whole debate, Javier?
I think Norco is a terrible name. I'm sorry, but it kills all the rain. Now, it's like normal. It's like the perfect pun. And there you go, just fucking it up. There is quite a bit of debate whether regarding the actual origins of the word marijuana in America, not the origin of the word, but the beginning of its use. And there isn't consensus, like general 100% consensus around the fact that this was born as a racist word. Now, was it racialized over time and weaponized? Yes, it was. Um, I am of the thought that people know what it means. Whoever is opposed to marijuana will also be opposed to cannabis or pot or weed. To them, it's all the devil's lettuce. I also think that as a movement, adhering to this, like continuing to feed the stigma around the word marijuana doesn't help us much. I understand why people are worried. It's never been an issue for me, right? Like as a Latino, like whenever someone told me, "Hey, you shouldn't use the word marijuana," I'm like, "Shut up!" You know, you don't tell me how to speak. Like I'm speaking English. I learned English from hip hop and movies. Like, be thankful I can speak English, so I would use whatever word. Um, I understand why some people feel uncomfortable, and it's totally fine that they don't have to use it. I don't think they should be forcing others not to use it. It's an interesting debate, and I thought about it a lot. But at this point, I'm like, let's just get over it and call it whatever.
Yeah.
but I will-
One thing I
Yeah.
go for it, Javi.
The rebranding in terms of words has worked very, very, very well in many cases. I'll give you an example. When I started writing about marijuana stocks in 2013, my parents were concerned, and they would tell their friends, like, no. He writes about medical marijuana. It's not the same. It's like it's the same, but whatever makes you feel comfortable. But then over that period of time, the activist movement in Argentina got really, really strong. And it was led mostly by patients and mothers. One of the biggest drivers of legalization down here was an organization called Mamá Cultiva Argentina, which basically means mom grows. And at a certain point, we as a movement managed and accomplished to establish that word in mainstream media and mainstream discourse, cannabis. And something changed. And I saw it change in front of my eyes. And people who thought, oh, marijuana, that thing, for the lazies and the druggies, suddenly we were talking about cannabis and everyone was comfortable. And now it's like, oh, Javiercito, tell me all about that cannabis oil and the drops. It does sound better. It does sound more medical for some reason, just because there's so many years of stigma attached. So it's a valid discussion, right? Is my point. There isn't one answer. My position is I will use it interchangeably. And sometimes it comes in handy. For instance, when we want to talk about like legal definitions, like marijuana versus hemp, which again, same plant, but like from the legal standpoint and the regulatory standpoint, they're seeing it different things. So it does come in handy. I like to use it. I understand people.
One thing that I definitely have difficulty with is, as activists, we're educators. We're trying to get rid of the stigma and educate on the truth. And one thing that I have difficulty with, honestly, is how complex marijuana is, or cannabis is. As soon as you start going beyond, this is something that gets you high, it seems like people's brains kind of shut off. It's a really difficult, not only is it a difficult thing to simplify, but it's also difficult to simplify how it affects the brain, how it affects the body. I'm wondering if you could give us some insight on how to kind of simplify and how to kind of present that as an activist.
That's a great question. Here's my take, though. In recent years, I think that the paradigm has shifted. And so people now increasingly understand that cannabis isn't just something to get you high, that it can get you high, but it has many other applications and benefits, that not all cannabis gets you high in practice. Even President Trump said it, right? Like, I don't like getting high. I don't like people getting high. I always tell my kids and Eric and whatever. But I think the medical applications are real, he said. Like I know a lot of people who use it for medicine. And so I think that has been somewhat instilled in the general view of the public. They're still prohibitionists, right? Like Sam is a great example of just complete denial, right?
Can I say fuck Kevin Sabet?
Free country, Gary. Go ahead.
Okay.
Fuck that
Kevin Sabet.
motherfucking Kevin Sabet.
And it's denial. It's complete denial. And let's do a mea culpa. As a movement, sometimes we have incurred in similar denial of cannabis has no adverse effects, no side effects. It's like, wait. We need to look at this as adults and acknowledge what is good about it, what is potentially not as good. I still think it's better than any other substance, right? But that doesn't mean it's for everyone. It doesn't mean it's innocuous in every use and application. It doesn't mean that it's the same to use a topical or an oil or smoke a joint or vape cannabis or vape and do a dab or you consume 50% or 90% THC or 15% THC. Like all of these variations are real and the effects are different. And the associated positive and negative effects of each vary, right? And I know it's unpopular many times, but it's important because it's the way you're taken seriously, I think. And I don't take myself too seriously, but I do want the plant and the movement to be taken seriously because that is what we need for it to be legalized. Like a majority of America overwhelmingly supports legalizing cannabis, and yet here we are in this eternal standstill. And every year it's the same story. This is the year. It's like Rachel and Ross and Friends. Will they or won't they? And it's like every fucking year the same thing again and again. People ask me, okay, what do you think? When do you think they will legalize? It's like I have no idea. I've been hearing this for forever.
Well, I can tell you it's been 1 month now since they announced, actually a month and a half now, since they announced that they were going to reschedule. And yet Pamela Sue, our favorite ex-attorney general in Florida, who now the attorney general for everybody else, still has not signed off on it. So I
don't think she will.
Losing hope that they actually released 3 million Epstein files today, and she still hasn't signed off on the rescheduling thing. It shows you how much we're getting pushback on that. Yet we have a new Moore bill, we have a new states bill, we have all sorts of new legislation. We have a bill hopefully to save the hemp industry for Carlos and all of his colleagues. We have 10,000 stores in this state alone they're going to close down if it continues to go through. And by the way, one more thing I got to say about Meta. They are sanctioning us, and yet I cannot stop getting ads for this THCA flower from all these various companies telling me that it's the real thing and showing a bunch of older folks with jars saying it's actual real Acapulco Gold. Stop those guys. Stop those. Put them in a closet. Definitely.
I don't even have an issue with THCA, to be honest. If it's produced safely, I think it's part of the plant. As long as it's tested and clean, I think it's fine. I open my Instagram and I get Alibaba ads for methamphetamine. I kid you not.
Yeah.
I saw one of those.
You guys want to know something crazy?
Hey, sorry?
I get ads for want to advertise your smoke shop on Instagram. Like I get ads targeted towards me as a smoke shop owner.
That's wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
One thing I wanted to that Javier pointed out, and I think is important, is that in this day and age, there is so much lack of political will to be bold, and it has often been us as activists and as a grassroots to continue to push the needle time and time again. He just said, people always ask, is this going to be the year? When's it going to be? And it made me think about the founder of Normal, Keith Straub, who still actively works as our legal counsel, who is still on the board of directors, who in his 80s is still fighting. So, you have to ask someone like him, is this going to be the year, right? Javier, Carlos, myself, we're all, in the millennial era. And that's definitely, Gary, I mean, you've been waiting for this to get legalized since you were in college back in the 60s, man. So there's definitely a lot to say around that.
You're about a decade off, but you're close.
The 70s, yeah. It makes me think, though, as to how important education still remains as an advocacy movement. And I wanted to tie it back to something that Carlos and Javier both touched on. Right now, Latinos remain the largest ethnic group and the fastest growing in the United States. And the Spanish-speaking world is Spanish is second most common language spoken among people other than like Mandarin, essentially. English is the language of the money, but commonly, if you looked at Earth, you got Mandarin, you got Spanish, and then you got English, in a lot of ways. So Javier, what you're doing with your own work with El Planteo and making High Times have a Spanish language, outlet for media is so important, because that is the group that I have struggled with Suncoast Normal in the Tampa Bay area, is to get Latinos in the baby boomer generation, the older folks, to understand this and then to be able to effectively talk about it in a way. We've tried our own ways with La Rotación in Espanol and trying to bring a Spanish language program and education and advocacy discussion. But there really does need to be a focus on being able to reach folks where they're at, reach them in their native language, reach communities and cultures that aren't necessarily in the fight, that are necessary for this, because it is our cultures that are over policed in a lot of ways. If you look at the stats, even in legal states, Latinos and African Americans are consistently and disparately pulled over and searched, even in a state where it's legal. There are still massive consequences in the justice sector.
And if I might say, the invasion of Venezuela, and I'm sorry, it was an invasion. It couldn't be. I couldn't call it anything else, along with pirating. But it senses to me that they're going after Colombia. Argentina, obviously, not quite in line yet, but could very well be. The contagion spreads, And I think it's important that your magazine continue to highlight what's also happening in Central and South America as far as the cannabis crops and how things are moving there, as far as the laws and the cultivation, things of that sort, because that will affect us in the long run.
Oh, 100%. And, just as prohibition emanated from America, any policy that we see now is likely to catch on in the rest of the world. And I was thinking about what you were saying, about Suncoast Normal and Florida. No matter what you thought or what you think of Amendment 3, the amendment that you voted on for adult use legalization, and a lot of people in the community were opposed because they were worried it would hand over the entire industry to very few, very powerful, well-funded players. But it was an adult use legalization ballot. And it was this close to clearing the threshold. It needed 60% of the vote. It got what? 50 what? Do you remember? 57?
54. 57 was the first try we had at medical in 2014. We got it over the top, like over 70 in 2016.
One of my theories is that it didn't reach the threshold because the campaign did not target Latinos. And I brought it up many times. Had a slogan, Vota sí, Amendment 3. It sounded good. It's like, okay, like you had a massive population which could have tilted the scale if you just spoke to them in their language, which, you needed these many points. And again, maybe it's a good thing. A lot of people still argue in Florida that it's a good thing that law specifically didn't pass. I am a thinker. I am of the belief that progress builds upon itself, and it's definitely better to have adult use legalized. But I also understand that power dynamics are hard to undo once they're legislated and regulated. So I don't know. I think it's also how America operates is different, right? So my view might be naive. Like I look at Uruguay and they legalized adult use cannabis more than 10 years ago without any thoughts of the market, and it was very imperfect. But then they improved it and improved it and improved it, and eventually the industry grew and whatever, right? But it was not conceived as an industry first move. Now, that's why I say I've seen progress building itself, and legalizing, even if imperfectly, is a great first step. If we seek to achieve the perfect legalization, we will be stuck in this loop for many years. I also understand why it was concerning to many people, right, in Florida. Like, hey, this is not the law that we want to see pass. But I think that's a separate debate. My point here was you have a massive untapped part of the population that could still tilt the scale in many states.
You're not wrong, brother. I think there was a lot of shortcomings in the people they hired to run the campaign. That same consulting firm, I guess is what you would call it, is essentially still in control. But there was a lot of missteps and gaps. The Latino community, as you point out, a big one, especially considering the size of it through the I-4 corridor between Tampa and Orlando. You think about the large Puerto Rican and Dominican populations in Kissimmee. You think about the larger Colombian and Venezuelan populations you have in Tampa. The large Mexican populations throughout the state, and then the large centering of Cubans in both Tampa, but especially in South Florida. And in South Florida, where Carlos is from, Cubans in South Florida are different from Cubans in Tampa. In Tampa, they tend to lead Democratic, and in South Florida, they tend to lean Republican and conservative. But there's swing votes, and the Latino community itself is not this monolithic box that America has made it. It is a vast majority of people with their own unique cultures, even their own unique words in the Spanish language that don't even translate to each other. So it is so important to have people on the ground who have a pulse to those communities anytime we do have a political fight. And the sad part is that consulting firm ran Ted Cruz's presidential campaign at one point. So I would definitely see the shortcomings that they might have and why they made some of those mistakes. But when we go back to the positives and negatives, Carlos and myself had this come to Jesus moment, if you will, on Amendment 3, which was if you have a toothache, what makes more sense, to keep dealing with the damn toothache or to pull it? And that's what prohibition is. And ending prohibition with Amendment 3. It was our only opportunity on the ballot to stop arrest and to stop people from going to jail with felony charges for less than an ounce, which happens in Florida. And I think that for all the negative blowbacks that we were going to experience, for having an industry-dominated adult use market for a few years, you said it. They eventually will work themselves out. In America, the market is essentially something that it will work itself out. The politicians will figure it out. But forever, the politicians that were adept at it, like the governor who didn't want to see it pass, ran the focus groups, and they funneled money where they needed to because they knew they could hit us in those few percentage points. They looked at the numbers like, hey, this is a razor thin majority. It's only polling at 60, and it needs 60 to pass. If we can peel off just a few activists, if we could peel off the hemp store owners, if we could peel off folks who and say, hey, if this passes, it's going to mess with your money, then that was definitely something that caused it. And we need more education because there are more people who didn't vote than people who actually voted for or against in anything on the ballot in the last election.
Now, we have a situation right now, of course, with this immigration crackdown, that they are actually going after the voter rolls. And if you think it's just about election fraud, it's not. It's also to find out where all the people who have immigrated and who are first, even second generation citizens of this country have come from, and whether they're still voting or not, because they are still attacking more than just, quote unquote, the worst of the worst people who never bothered to go to immigration office. That's not even happening.
Well, Gary, again, there is a political motivation behind everything. And there are new immigrant communities in this country that do not align with the current administration, and they've never written checks and will never probably write them checks. That's why we're seeing a crackdown on the Somalian communities in various states. And we see a lot of sensationalist headlines because Somalis, as new immigrants, have been, as a community, their business community has donated heavily to the Democratic Party. But I don't want to make this about Republican and Democrat politics. I want to stay focused on the plan and go back to what we were saying. Javier brought up a great point. You got to reach people where they are. There are tons of Latino voters who didn't even turn out and bother to vote, that had we just reached out to them, they would have cast ballots. They would have went out and voted for this, and it would have had a down ballot coattails effect, which is another reason why we see the powers that be that are currently in power in Florida didn't want to see it pass. Because anytime cannabis is on the ballot, it is always more popular than who's running for governor or president or senator, because people want their weed. Like Javier said in the beginning, the more Americans support this than don't. And the prohibitionists have lost, but what they still maintain is influence. They've lost the public, but they have the influence over the political spectrum. And that's really where we have to put our pressure points, which is why Suncoast Normal continues to make candidate endorsements, which is why each and every week, when we're not bringing on cannabis luminaries like Javier, we're bringing on folks that are running for Congress or the state legislature, because we feel it's important that the cannabis consumer also be an educated voter.
Okay, I know we got to wrap this up soon because I know Javier has to go. So I have a quick question for you. You've been all over the country. Which state has the best medical program? Which state has the best recreational program? We have our own opinions here.
Oh man, no, you're killing me. That's a difficult question. I don't think I want to answer that. No, I really don't know enough, man. I really don't know enough. I can tell you what I like, right? Like I'm going to give you the example of the Argentinian model, right? When we legalized medical cannabis in 2017, the first thing we regulated was home grow and a caregiver model, no commercial licenses, immediate direct access for patients. Then the money discussion followed, but the regulation was thought as a patient-first regulation. And in that sense, like a lot of people feel nostalgia for the early California and Colorado days, where you would just show up with a paper slip and get your weed without much of a hassle. So the question of like, which is the best market is a difficult one, because they're all deeply flawed, but also have a lot of benefits, starting with the sheer fact that there is access. So any adult use program is better than none. Now they can all be improved. They can all incorporate more social equity. They can all improve the licensing process and the testing process and the taxes that apply to them. There's so many debates like, hey, with falling prices, producers and farmers are really struggling. But what about patients? Is it good for patients to, to have medicine be more affordable? There's always two sides to everything, right? I was recently on a podcast and the host was arguing the government should depenalize cannabis and stay completely out of it. No government whatsoever. I'm like, okay, perfect. So, and they should legalize and stay out of our business. And I'm like, oh, perfect. So we legalize. What do you think happens in America? Like big corporations take over. Oh, yeah. The government should protect small farmers. And it's like, yeah, then you want some government. You don't want no government. You don't want some incentive for small farmers, right? And it's always nuanced and complex. And that is also a lot of what we try to relay at High Times, is that these issues are nuanced and complex. Nothing is inherently good or bad, in terms of progress. So like, who has the best program is a difficult one, right? I hear great things, from many New Yorkers about the New York program, but then people who are in the industry wouldn't agree.
I've got an easier question.
Yeah.
Who has the best weed?
That is
Carlos, this man is in a poor position. You messed up his diplomatic
Well, we can
credentials.
look at who won the High Times Cups.
I'm going to tell you one thing. You know who doesn't have the best weed? Dispensaries.
Dispensaries. Okay, that is a great transition into the fact that there's going to be a New York High Times Cannabis Cup.
Yes,
So
sir.
High Times is getting into the business back again of finding the best weed.
Yes, sir.
Right? My
When's
question
that
to
going
you
then?
is, when can I be a judge?
So we have different models. So this New York Cannabis Cup is happening on February 7th, and it's a People's Choice Award. Now, a lot of people will argue, why do you not have judges? And, a lot of the common people and the average Joe doesn't know enough about terpene profiles. And I'm like, who gives a fuck? You know what? We're done with the gatekeepers. You know what's the best weed? The one people like, the one that's clean, the one that makes you feel good, the one that when you puff, you love it, that it's not dry and that, the joint doesn't canoe or whatever your preferred consumption method is. So the best weed is not the highest THC. It's not the biggest hype. It's whatever you like. And that's why I like the format of the People's Choice Award. Now, when we come to Florida, we will likely need to be a medical cup. Maybe we have judges. Maybe we do a People's Choice Award, but I will make sure to hit you up and either way get you to judge, because I like the judging process. And, a decade ago, I was invited to judge cups, hey, come to Canada, come to Amsterdam. And the judging process would be like getting in a room with 20 other stoners who knew weed, smoke 40 different strains in a night, and figure out which one is the best. And it's like, what the fuck do I do after the third joint? I have no idea what is going on. And so this judging methodology, people get a kit, they go back home, they have like 2 months to go through 31 pre-rolls or 14 strains of sativa or 11 strains of indica,
I can tell you that with Carlos, one hit of coffee grounds, he'll be reset within 5 minutes, and he can go on to the next strain totally sober.
That's a superpower. Good for you.
Yes. Carlos's superpower is also getting other people really stoned. He is definitely really good at that. So stoned that they will forget their keys at his house, even though they drove home. So
I'm very proud of all these powers I have.
Yes. Well, Javier, we know that you have so many amazing projects going on right now, from High Times and the publications to, of course, what you have doing with educating the Spanish-speaking community about the plant. Just share with folks how they can support and just share your closing thoughts for the folks watching at home.
Support however you can. Support by reading, by liking social media posts. By commenting and saying, hey, this is good journalism, because algorithms will reward memes more than content, but there's substance in content and there's work that goes into content. If you can support financially, please do, right? Like buy a magazine, get a subscription, subscribe to a Planteo, hire our social media and digital marketing services, because sustaining media nowadays is very difficult. Now, back to High Times, if there's so many ways to support, like there's merch and there's the Cannabis Cup, centering your products into the Cannabis Cup or sponsoring our events. But ultimately, any and all types of support really matter. And to me, at least, what makes me happy is when I see people engage with the content and say, hey, the effort that the writer, the editor, the person who adapted it for social media or who made the video was worth it. We appreciate the thoughtfulness that you put into that. Because otherwise we get into the cycle where it's like, people say, oh, all the content nowadays, it's all stupid and bullshit, but then they don't reward good content. And there are a few ways to measure it, right? If people don't engage, there is no incentive to continue to produce it. we are in a fortunate position where we can produce something amazing, and create amazing content and thoughtful content. But the feedback is important and the engagement is important. Anything else that people can do financially always helps, because the economics of media nowadays are dire. But we remain committed. I remain committed. I could have changed careers years ago and made a lot more money working at a hedge fund or in finance. And I still choose journalism every day, informing, educating, advocating for this plan, for the movement, for the people, learning, and it's fulfilling. So if there's one little grain of salt that you can contribute with, is the emotional support. Financial is important. They both are important, but even if you can't commit financially, just that low comment goes much further than you'd imagine.
All right, thanks a lot. Javier,
Well, on that note, if you're watching the rotation, if you watch the rotation right now, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter or Twitch, hit that like and subscribe button. Share what you're doing. As Javier said, you can make a big impact by sharing this video, by leaving us a comment. If you're watching the replay on Sunday, of course, continue to make a comment, share, subscribe. We want to continue to bring you great guests each and every week, like Javier. We want to continue to bring celebrities and luminaries in the cannabis movement. We want to continue to bring you elected officials and folks running for office and lawmakers that are having an impact on you as a cannabis consumer. The most important thing you can do is that give us a follow on social media, follow our new Instagram page, Suncoast_normal, subscribe to us, as I said, on YouTube at Suncoast_normal, and across all the other social media platforms. And in the grand scheme of things, if you have the resources, become a member of Normal, become a member of our chapter of Suncoast Normal. And again, all the membership dues go to our advocacy and education. Carlos, Gary, myself, all of our board members, we're all volunteers. We don't take a dime to do this. We put all the money back into the organization to make sure that we accomplish the mission, which is, in 2 words, to legalize it. So, Javier, thank you again for your time. Thank you all for watching. And remember to jump into rotation at our regularly scheduled time each and every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And, of course, stay frosty. And, Carlos, what's the word?
It's smoke weed every day.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, it's normal. For
as
sure,
one of my other Cuban friends said,
it's not expensive. You can start with $10. Just it's an organization that deserves their support. They've done so much for us. Don't be stingy.
Thank you, Javier. We truly appreciate it. We truly do.
And
Carlos, roll that beautiful theme music when Gary's done with his thought.
Thank you. Because as another Cuban friend of mine once said, when I asked him the same question about whether or not the word marijuana was racist, and we were talking, I said, this is an epidemiological organization, and we believe in the origin of words. And he said, "Mota puta." So I'll leave you with that.